even in parts of the country that are very prosperous, you see really significant hardship up close next to it. And I think then that can get lost in national discussions because obviously we focus on where are the largest numbers of poorer people and where is the most visible problems, because that's how you you've got to decide where to focus. And I thought I would just illustrate that in 3 different ways. So these are about divides within Sussex. So the first is on employment. And this is showing you, and I think most people would be surprised about this. So this is UK average employment level, 75. Yes, there's been a bit of a fall recently, but UK employment is high. 75% is high. Again, nobody would have thought we could have got there. One of the big increases in the 2010s that the government rightly says is a triumph is this being about 3% higher than it was a decade ago. Okay? The increase is almost all women. It's a mixture of older women and younger women, but it's almost all women over the last few years. West Sussex is a rich part of the country, and it has what you generally see in rich parts of the country, which is high employment rates. But East Sussex has the kind of employment rate you normally see in poor urban places. And this isn't because East Sussex is older, which it is. This is for the working age population. So this is not because you've got loads of 65, 70-year-olds in there. You've got a low employment rate in East Sussex. You all know that, as you see it. But the gap is large. And as I say, that is what you see in some poor, large urban areas where we would talk about unemployment. It's not as bad as Birmingham because nowhere is as bad as Birmingham on unemployment, but it's not dissimilar to what we see in some other big urban areas. Same point, but on child poverty. So look, this is UK average child poverty, 29%, far too high. Pension and poverty been falling for 3 decades, not falling as much now, but the pension and poverty problem is far less than it was when I first started working in this kind of areas. But child poverty has not fallen at all. Child poverty amongst large families is far too high in Britain, far too high. Partly because of policy and partly because of social change. So 1 in 3 kids nearly grow up in poverty. Large chunks of East Sussex has above average child poverty rates. Right? In the national debate, people talk about London being rich by having high child poverty because of housing costs. In East Sussex, it's not just because of high housing costs, it's low wages as well, and not enough employment. Whereas it come down to mid-Sussex, 17%, Horsham, 19%, way below average child poverty rates. Again, I'm not saying there aren't poor people in those places, but they're half as likely to be in poverty as people in some bits of East Sussex. Those numbers should mean people should care about these things, even if they don't think Sussex as a whole is what they mainly care about. And then another thing that gets lost, particularly lost by people like me that spend our time looking at the national picture, is obviously what's happening at the hyper-local level. But lots of the activities that foundations like this are supporting are happening at a very local level. I just want to illustrate why that is so important. So that you're not going to be able to see the details of this, but this is a picture of Brighton and the Brighton urban area, Brighton and Hove, by deprivation. So it's at the ward level, the very local street level, and it's measures of deprivation. In red, we've got places that are very deprived at a UK, compared to the whole of the UK, and in blue, we've got places that are least deprived compared to the rest of the UK. And this is telling you what you probably should know, but in Hove, we've got some of the least deprived parts of the whole of the United Kingdom, sandwiched between Portslade and other bits of Brighton, which are incredibly deprived. So very local, next to each other. I mean, they probably talk about it being a long way away from each other. But this is like 10 minutes walk. This is 10 minutes walk. Those kind of differences are why you don't want national policymakers being the only people trying to solve deprivation, because you need the local knowledge, you need to know where the need is